So, when we look at the future of insurance, I also always sort of take insurance out of the equation, right? So when we think about the market of the future, we see things like increased globalization, that's wind up playing out. We see a lot of socio-political and socio-economic issues that are impacting just the general way that people sort of engage in the broader market that's outside of insurance. And we also see things like lifestyle change and lifestyle demand that's driving people to look differently about how they do their work on a day-to-day basis, right? So, years ago, you saw organizations like Lyft and Uber come into play, but then as soon as the pandemic hit, all of a sudden everybody was getting their food delivered to them from things like DoorDash, for example, or Uber Eats,
or you could like shadow kitchens or whatever, like
exactly,
and
those are different exposures than what we've seen play out at the scale that we've seen it occur over the last 2 years, and it's really become much more ubiquitous in the last 2 years than what we've seen, right? So that means that as an insurance organization, those things that have nothing to do with insurance, you have to be able to figure out, okay, well, what are the levers that we need to put in place in order to drive things like digital enablement that's going to help us to interplay in that space based on the what we've been seeing as a part of the market of the future. It's the same thing when we talk about the distribution of the future, right? Well, what we have to do is figure out, okay, well, the customer expectation is changing. Customers are looking for us to deliver or distribute their insurance and the service model, through different capabilities, right? So how do we make sure that we meet the customers in their channel of choice? And how can insurance companies ensure that we're providing that channel of choice for customers to meet? Otherwise, you might wind up edging out a customer that's looking to get things in a certain way that you're no longer able to support. And you may find out, a couple of years down the line that way is becoming a little bit more ubiquitous. And with you not being able to provide that capability, those players that had the foresight is going to wind up leading in that space where you're not going to be able to innovate quick enough in order to support that, right? And it's the same thing, as I mentioned, of, that delivery of the future and what that means, right? Where we think about, well, not only how we're going to deliver it, right? But hey, should we think about enabling customers to be able to pick up their product or capability or service model in a channel that is product agnostic, right? So whether or not I like to use the notion that if we go out and if I buy a car, I want to make sure that I can buy the car. Me being in the insurance industry, I always think about, well, hey, I got to buy insurance for that car. But a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old that's driving first, all they're worried about is the car, right? That insurance becomes secondary, or they'll get put on their parents' insurance, right? So frankly, there are ways to say, okay, well, we can make this product of insurance somewhat channel agnostic, right? So maybe they're paying their car payment, but on top of that, they're getting the insurance to come along with that car payment. So they don't have to think about it, right? It's just a part of what's coming along, and we're starting to see more and more of that, right? Thinking about whether or not we want to look at the industry as sort of the old GM distribution model, if you want to use sort of a car analogy, right? The old distribution model that you tend to get from like GM, Ford, and Chrysler, some of those older organizations, or do we really want to look at it from more of the digital perspective and still be able to deliver that car to a driver, but do it in a way that's more digitally enabled, that's more based on the new customer experience, like an organization like Carvana is doing, right? That's really, taking the friction out of the process and being able to, purchase a car and making that purchase of a car more extremely easy than the way that it was done in the past, right? So that's the way that, as we look at sort of the future of that's the way that I see the future of the industry going, right? Sort of in those three channels, and figure out how do you make it a little bit easier to really drive those capabilities of delivery, distribution, and those things in the future. I'm Abel Travis from AF Group, and this is the future of insurance.